Well, good evening and welcome back to the Seasiders podcast Friday night preview show. It is the 5th of February, so welcome back to everyone. It seems forever since we were back live doing a Friday show with the specials that have gone on in recent weeks with the Brighton game and the Charlie Adam interview, which you need to stay tuned until Sunday to watch that one. It's definitely worth the 2-hour watch, but we have got a full pack show today. We've got two special guests from Ipswich Town this evening, which we'll introduce very shortly. But again, any comments, we'll try and read out as much as we can and get your involvement throughout the show. But first of all, we'll introduce this man. He doesn't need an introduction. It is Tom. How are you doing, Tom?
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, I'm good. You?
Yeah, not too bad. It's, I guess, due to postponements, mate. It's been quite a while since we've been on here, bar the live stream.
Yeah, the Ben Burgess interview seemed a while ago since we played Hull, but it's great to be back and good evening all everyone in the chat as well.
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep trying to get everyone in. And someone you messaged on Twitter before, Tom. He's watching from the bedroom in the hotel in Ipswich or just outside. So, Coach Critchley, welcome to the stream. And again, John Ford just echoing what I said about Charlie Adams' interview. We also have Craig on the show this evening. Craig, welcome back to the Seasider podcast. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks very much, Sam. Yeah, good to speak to you again.
Yeah, how's things been since we last spoke? It was a good result for you guys after we did the Friday night preview together, but how's things been since?
Yeah, downward, shall we say. Yeah, we were top of the league, I think, after we beat you guys back in the autumn, whenever it was. And it's been a pretty steady decline ever since, sadly.
We'll see. You never know what can happen in League One football, as we were saying beforehand. So we'll see how tomorrow's encounter goes. We also have Joe, who is a very good friend of Craig's, I believe. So, Joe, welcome to the Seasiders podcast.
Good evening, guys.
How's things with you then? How have you coped during lockdown this year, but this calendar year and into last year, I guess?
I've been quite lucky in that I've been able to carry on working through it and sort of getting out of the house every now and again, because with two young children sort of being cooped up in here isn't ideal. So sort of touch wood, I've been sort of well off, and people are a lot worse off than me. So I'm pleased with that.
Yeah, well, hopefully getting back to some normality with the vaccine coming out this calendar year. So we'll see. Hopefully fans back inside the ground. And we got Craig's thoughts last time out. And Joe, how have you adapted to life watching football on a computer screen, laptop screen, or stuff like that? It's just not the same, is it?
No, it's something that is sort of beginning to grate on me so much so that I bought a new laptop this week because my one is so old and I struggle to get iFollow to work on there. So basically where I'm sitting now is where I have to sit to work most of the week. I'm doing a uni course as well, so I'm sitting here for that. I'm watching the football sitting in this same seat. So I've treated myself to a new laptop so I can move into the lounge to watch games. So it's exciting times ahead of tomorrow's event.
Definitely exciting. It sounds like that. Joe, what we do with all of our guests when they come onto the show, obviously Craig's been here and done that and told his story, but give us an insight into how you got supporting Ipswich and any memories that stand out to you following your club.
Well, I'm from Ipswich, so that's sort of the main reason. And I got taken to a game sort of by a couple of my uncles when I was about 6 years old in the sort of promotion season 91-92, sort of giving my age away there. But and just from then on, I've been hooked and sort of had a season ticket ever since. But for me, sort of the main good memories are effectively sort of George Burley's time in charge of the club from sort of, I think he came in late 1994 and sort of the playoff season. I think we lost 4 times in the playoffs, and then we finally got over the hump, winning at Wembley, going to the Premier League, finishing 5th. And at that point, it just all seemed to come quite easy, really. It seemed it was never going to end, and I probably didn't take sort of as much advantage of it as I should have done. It sort of coincided with my last couple of years at school, the sort of European away trip. So I unfortunately wasn't able to go on any of those, and but at the time it just seemed like, oh well, we're sort of established in the Premier League now, so I won't have to worry. And we got relegated after finishing 5th, and 18 years later, is it now, we're now in League One after a long stint in the Championship. And bar a couple of seasons under Joe Royle at the start of it, there hasn't really been a huge amount to celebrate for Ipswich fans in that time. So I think some of us thought going down to League One it wasn't something I personally wanted to do. I think some people wanted to take relegation to come back stronger, but once it was confirmed, it was sort of a case of actually this should be fun, go to some new grounds, actually win some games for a chance. But after the first, I think we took 27 points from the first 11 games last season, and since then we have been pretty rubbish and consistently pretty rubbish, and we've basically picked up points at the rate of a mid-table team. And like I say, we're not going to Portman Road at the moment, but we've lost 6 out of the last 7 home games, which is sort of unacceptable at any level, really, let alone for in the third tier, where for a club of sort of our history and size and resource at the current time, more importantly. And I was able to go to the 1 win in the last 7 because that was when the grounds were open for the 2,000 fans.
Yeah, Rich has just said, don't embarrass us, Joe and Craig. I don't know if you know who that guy is leaving the comments in. But Craig, what's gone wrong, do you think, at Ipswich? Because Joe there talks about the history side of things. Last season, I was working at Fleetwood. They came to Highbury, nicked a 1-0 win, looked strong, solid. Similar start this season, as we said before, that sat top of the table, I think, after the 4-1 battering against Blackpool. Just what's gone wrong in your opinion?
Yeah, well, but both seasons have really mirrored each other. In that when the game you're talking about at Fleetwood, I was up with that with Rich actually, who's just messaged. And again, we were either first or second after that match. With games in hand and top of the league, we thought, crikey, as Joe was saying, this is a bit of a walk in the park here. But where things fell off a cliff after that match, they've sort of happened a little bit earlier this time round. And as Joe said again, our form over the majority of last season and the majority of this so far is just above relegation form, let alone promotion form. And it just seems to be it's the stubbornness of the manager. That's all we can really put it down to. There's no real plan of action. It's just there's a doubling down within the club and the owner of backing the manager against all odds. The local newspapers turned against the manager and called for his head. If there were fans in the ground, I'm positive that Lambert would already be out of a job because the atmosphere would just be so bad that the owner would have no other choice really. But he's just getting away with it through virtue of there being no fans in the ground really, more than anything else.
Joe, just coming in there, sorry, that I think me and Craig spoke about how Lambert was still in a job this summer last time, just for the game at Blackpool Road, and I guess. How has he kept his job? Because at the end of last season, lost so many games on the bounce. Again, I come back to the Fleetwood thing, 1-0 defeat at home against Fleetwood, and the atmosphere inside the ground was, again, it was so hostile. I think that's the word I'd use. But are you surprised he was still in the job come the summer, or do you think COVID saved his job like a few other managers in League One?
Oh, COVID, without a doubt, saved his job because, I don't know, he got himself in this strange position where, like I said, we'd start the season really well, and sort of the story that's sort of come out now is that at that stage is when Sunderland sacked Jack Ross, and I think he was flirting with Sunderland sort of to try and get himself a new contract at Ipswich Town. But by the time he signed this new 5-year contract, we hadn't won for 8 games, and there was an announcement made sort of on New Year's Day. We all travelled to Wickham, and I'm pretty sure that if you'd have asked 100 Ipswich fans, 99, you said there's a big announcement about the manager, 99 would have said he's been sacked as opposed to signed a new contract, let alone a 5-year deal. And we ended last season with 7 defeats in 9 as we'd somehow found ourselves back at the top of the league in January, and then we ended up finishing, I think we finished 9th or 10th, and then with points per game dropped us down to 11th. This season, as Craig said, started the same, and like I say, it's unbelievably still in a job. I think he could have been sacked sort of three separate occasions, and it's just, like I say, the results. There's this talk about if there were sort of 3 games to save your jobs, 4 games to save your job, and we just haven't won any of these games at any point, and it's, well, like I say, it's embarrassing now, the situation we find ourselves in with the. Like I say, it's not about saying, oh, we're a massive club. Ultimately, we're one of the best resource clubs in this division, and like I said, we've got this record against the top 10. Like I said, we finished 11th last year. The 10 teams that finished above us, we won 2 of those games out of, I think, 18. And the 2 wins were away at Fleetwood when they were sort of 3rd in the league, and we beat Gillingham when we were top and they were sort of 17th, and that was the other time. And this year, it's the same story again. We're 11th now. We've won 2 games against the top 10 out of 12, 13, and that was against Accrington and Crewe. So every time we've come up against Sunderland, Peterborough, Portsmouth, any of the big hitters, we just haven't won a game, and it's just a lack of goals. Like I said, we're relatively organised defensively. We sort of don't concede many, but we just do not score any goals at all, apart from when we played Blackpool earlier in the season.
How's the sort of communication between Mr. Evans, your beloved Mr. Evans, and the fans? Because he seems, I live quite locally, obviously, and I see some of the newspapers and stuff, and I know Ipswich fans wanted him out as well. Has he sort of got in contact with the fans, or sort of give you any indication on why Lambert's still in the job, or if he's putting trust into him, or what's happening for the club in the future as well?
Not really. No, we get like a 5-point plan every year. We'll come out with a slightly rejigged 5-point plan that we forget about a few months later and hope that everyone else has forgotten about it in the preceding months. We don't hear anything from him really. We supposedly got a director of football operations who's supposed to be like the mouthpiece of the club, but we don't really hear too much from him either. He did say something this week about the fact we're bringing in loans, which is contravening one of the items of the 5-point plan that I was just talking about. So there isn't really much conversation between the club and the fans, full stop. Lambert isn't doing press conferences with the local press at the moment, and that was sort of before they started asking for him to get the tin tack. The club have banned like the local fanzine reporter. Sorry, that's being disrespectful. The local fanzine sends the main guy to the press conferences and bits and pieces like that. He's a journalist. He's been banned from the club because what the team was leaked on his message board before one of the matches recently. So it's just been a bit of a PR disaster all around, really. And as I said before, and as Joe said, Lambert, he would have been out of a job if the fans had been anywhere near the ground.
Yeah, I'm surprised, as I said before, that I think if COVID didn't happen in March, I think with the results and games coming up for you guys, I don't think he would be in a job, or definitely not at Ipswich this season. But Tom, we'll move on to Blackpool a little bit here. And Blackpool fans, if you want to have your say on the last few games, do get your comments in. But obviously they go into this game after the 2-0 victory against Northampton on Tuesday night. A wet and windy conditions, which you expect on the Foul Coast, as most Tuesday night games are. But a great goal from Jerry Yates, which we've seen get thousands of views on social media, and Marvin Ekpiteta getting another goal, 2 in 2 games for him. So it was a positive result in that respect, but the performance could have been better, couldn't it?
Yeah, difficult one, isn't it? I think Northampton made the game a bit worse than it could have been, but we should have probably stepped our game up a little bit more. And the early-ish goal sort of helped us with Marv's getting a header, which was probably going maybe slightly on target, maybe off. So it's a bit controversial in terms of own goal there. But yeah, it's good to see him score again. But the goal from Jerry Yates gave everyone a big boost, because that's got over sort of 90-odd thousand sort of views, and the whole sort of Twitter following has seen that, and rightly so. It's an incredible bit of individual skill, and people say it's bad defending, but for me, if Messi or Salah or if anyone scores it, it's front page news. And that bit of individual brilliance gave us a boost and gave us that second goal, which in turn sort of put a shine on the night overall. We should have scored 2 or 3 more, but we did our job really well. We handled sort of the spells of pressure they had. It's a game we should have won, and arguably it's a game we might have lost or drawn at the start of the season. So overall, I'm really happy to see us win that game and kick on a bit.
Yeah, I'll just read 2 comments out here. Righties has said, I thought the overall performance was pretty awful from us, even though we scored 2. Northampton were all over the place, which we have discussed. And Gareth's comments here, he said, I don't care how we play as long as we win, a sign of a good team. Just your thoughts on that comment there, Tom? Yeah,
no, perfect summary from Gareth. I mean, it's one of those games, like I said, when we played the Wimbledons in the past and we lost, we probably would have drawn or lost that game at the start of the season. So sign of a good team is winning ugly. And and we did that. We've lost some key players, but we've still in the last two games found a way to win. Wigan 5-0 was phenomenal. Don't care what team they've got out, they've still got some decent players in there. Cole Joseph up front, for example, and we managed to cut them open many times. So, like I said, it's a sign of a good team to win 2-0 against a dogged side, and hopefully we can bring that mentality into the games where we've got a bit more freedom. And I think tomorrow will bring that for both teams. You're on mute.
Always helps, doesn't it? There's always some issues. Last time we played Ipswich, we weren't on the best run of form, and we were a bit worried and sceptical about the game being played. It was agreed before, I think, the game that was played on the weekend or the Tuesday night, whenever it was, that it would go ahead, despite injuries and suspensions. But we obviously go into this game with 2 wins on the bounce in the league. You touched on them on both there. And I guess in a disruptive fixture list that we've got, scoring 7, conceding none, we go into that game full of confidence against an Ipswich side, as Craig and Joe have alluded to, that are, I guess, lacking in confidence.
It's got all the ingredients for
a 0-0.
Yeah. I've just sort of put a summary on the last 2 games, really. I think there's absolutely no reason why we can't go into that game tomorrow full of confidence and to fight for the win. In my opinion, as much as I hate to say this, because I don't think we've ever... I think for all my life I've supported Blackpool. I wish for the day we played Ipswich away, and now I wish we never played them away because we never win there. But it's a ground we're not really comfortable at, and we haven't won there, I think, ever. But sort of history's there to be broken, isn't it? And tomorrow, I think, depending on what side he puts out, I'd like to probably see Medine back just for that bit of experience to give their defence a torrid time. But whatever team he puts out, has shown that they can perform. We've got some new additions, which should bring the team together. I think Stuart's been phenomenal. The 2 games he played, even though he come on the sub against Wigan, he showed sort of the level he has played at in the past. And the 90 minutes he played on Tuesday will do him the world of good as well. So it's another addition to the team that's going to make us stronger.
Yeah, definitely. We'll move on to Ipswich now. Again, thanks for the fans' comments. We'll get them on the screen. We'll read some questions out if you've got any. If you're Blackpool or Ipswich fans, you guys do make the show as well. So, Craig, I'll come to you first, and then Joe, you can answer afterwards if you want to. Obviously, Ipswich go into this game with just 1 win in their last 5. As we spoke before, it's a bit worrying, but on the flip side of that, the record against Blackpool's rather good. You've obviously not lost at home against them. What's your thoughts, Craig, going into this game?
Well, yeah, I don't think what's happened years previously is too much to go by. I think you can probably read more into the last 6 or 7 matches from our perspective, in that we've lost them all apart from Burton. Good job we've been playing Burton recently. Otherwise, our record would be even worse than it is. We're setting records in this league. We've gone, is it 19 or 20 matches, Joe, without leading at half time.
Wow.
And that's in our history that we've never done that. We're now setting those sort of records in the 3rd division. It's just that it is that bad. And we're hearing a lot of teams saying, "Oh well, eventually it'll happen, and no doubt it'll happen against us." Well, it hasn't happened so far against these other teams that are saying it. And it's funny you were saying about Medine potentially playing. What Tom was saying, recommending he does. We play 2 very young centre halves, or have done very recently. Play 2 very young centre halves, and they do have a tendency to be bullied a little bit by more experienced, players with a little bit of nous who can manipulate them and got a bit of experience behind them. So that could well be another weak spot in our weak chink in our armoury.
Joe, just coming to you. We'll just again, we briefly spoke about it, but what do you think's gone wrong at home then to have this record of 6 defeats in the last 7 at home?
Simply, we play a style of Lambert's tried last season. We changed formation and personnel literally every single game. I think at one point we'd played for the first 32 or 33 games of the season, we'd played 33 totally unique 11s. So not even going back to the same team. They were all totally unique. And then this year he's said, I'm not going to change the team about. I'm going to play the exact same formation. But we seem to have settled on this formation, which is sort of loosely described as a 4-3-3, but it relies on the fullbacks bombing on. So far this season, we've played 2 35-year-old fullbacks week in, week out. And after the first 6 or 7 games, they just haven't had the legs to get up and down the pitch. And then And up front, we just haven't had a striker capable of playing that role on his own. And we've also then sort of doubled up that problem by playing two wingers so wide that they just sit on the touchline. And we also just move the ball so slowly from front to back. So any team that comes in and is happy just to let us have the ball and sit there, we just simply can't. We just can't break anyone down because we're looking to score the perfect goal. But I think one of the guys on a podcast on Saturday said after sort of the Crew game, we sort of move the ball at half the speed and take twice as many touches as they do, getting the ball into the box. And it really, really is just that slow. Like we'll dominate possession, but in our half. And the only thing the manager seems to be able to do is to try and bring in new players to try and make us better. There's not semblance of sort of improving the team by coaching or anything along those lines. And we just do not score. We do not, and it's not like we don't create anything at all. There's very, very few chances. We'll have one or two shots on target a game, and it's just. I'm sure Craig will see. We are not a goal threat at all, and when you heap that pressure on the defence, mistakes happen, and that's what's been happening consistently. And even, like I say, you talk about not getting much luck and things like that, but even, like I say, Peterborough, we lost 1-0, scored no goal, but they missed a penalty because we gave away a poor penalty, and it's like that every game. Like I say, we played Charlton, we went behind within a minute or two, and they probably still created the 5 best chances of the game after that. It's hugely worrying. You're just relying on. We're relying on having better players in the opposition and one of them doing something, and it's not been happening since the start of the season.
And that's why we end up where we do in the league, and that's why we probably have got better players than 11, 12 of the teams in this division. So we end up 11, 12. When we play the teams, as Joe was saying, playing the top 10 teams, where we've got similar sort of level players, that's when your tactics and your manager, that takes you up and lets you beat that level of team. So that's why we're failing that side of things.
I'm just looking at recent games here, and obviously last game a draw with Crew away, lost 1-0 at home to Sunderland, lost 1-0 at home to Peterborough, obviously beat Burton, but then you look at that, it's just, you said struggling for goals, aren't you? And I think Tom, I'll come back to the other guys in a minute, but Blackpool were the same, weren't they? They were maybe creating a few chances, not many, but not scoring, and one of the lowest scoring teams in the division. I think the last 2 games have helped, but it does seem to be a similar stat with what we've witnessed with Blackpool and what's happening at Ipswich.
Yeah, it was only the 5-0 against Wigan which put us into positive. To be fair, we've lacked goals all season, and when we did win, it's been a scrappy 1-0 against teams like Wigan and MK Dons. We, in the start of the season, sort of just scraping those wins and not taking our chances. And at the start of the season, I wasn't specifically saying Gritchley needs to go immediately, a bit like Ipswich fans are doing with Lambert. But if it continued, then we would have been bottom 3. I have absolutely no doubt about that. And Craig's already alluded to the fact that Ipswich are on that sort of form now, and I can see why they're frustrated. So it is a difficult time to be a football fan when you know what your team's potential of, and you've got someone sort of holding you back. And I don't think that was the case with Gritchley. I do think Calderwood coming in, giving him some direction, helped him, but ultimately his creativity is now coming through, and the players we've signed are exciting. They may need time to nurture, but we've certainly sorry, coach. We've certainly sort of come bearing fruits with players like Medine and Yates now ticking. And I, for one, are an advocate for the 4-4-2. I've said it 100 times over, but the moment we play that, we look organised, we look threatening, and we look like we can score at any time. And even if we do go 1-0 down, or the opposition do have a spell of sort of think, they might score in a minute, we deal with it really well. And we've got players like Ballard, even Thornley's come in. Husband's been much more reassured than he was at the start of the season. Gabriel's been brilliant. Turton's been the steady Eddie that we need. So yeah, for me, we've got the ingredients of a successful sort of top 10 side, and anything above sort of the top 10 for me will be a successful season. Would I like to see us push on a little bit more? I think so, but I don't think personally we're quite there yet. But if we have a better second half of the season we did first, then I think we'll be around about the playoffs.
Yeah, talking about kind of goals and lack of goals for Ipswich, I'll come to you first, Joe. Obviously, Ipswich, you said they brought in 2 players early on in the January transfer window and 2 late ones. And the 2 late ones were Troy Parrott on loan from Spurs. Sorry, I was going to say Tottenham. And then he was on loan at Millwall for the start of the season, where he played 15 games and hasn't scored a goal in any competitive football he's played. And also Luke Matheson, who I think he was the youngest player to play in League One and famously scored that goal against Manchester United when Rochdale were at Old Trafford a few years back. So looking at January transfer windows, what are your thoughts on the recruitment the window just gone?
I didn't think we needed a huge amount because we've got such a big squad as it is, but we picked up 2 guys earlier in the window in Josh Harrop from Preston, and sort of Ipswich being Ipswich, he came in, signed for us, and the day after he signed, or within hours of signing, he then tested positive for COVID. So it's been sort of 10 days sort of isolation, and now he's back available for the first game tomorrow, but he'll probably be on the bench. And Josh Thomas down from Barnsley, Troy Parrott. Again, we're relying on kids effectively to try and help us out of this position we're in. And I'd say Troy Parrott is sort of very highly regarded at Tottenham, but I think he struggled at Millwall because he got injured in pre-season, missed a big chunk of the season. Then on their 4-2-3-1 was playing on the left-hand side, so he wasn't really playing as a striker. But if you're relying on an 18-year-old who's never scored a senior goal to come in and fire you to promotion, then I think we're going to be in for a shock. But it's just a case of we don't create. You could put Harry Kane up front rather than Troy Parrott from Tottenham, and we just do not create any chances for the striker at all. And interestingly, in the press conference today, the first team coach took the press conference, and he said we've now got the players to play 4-4-2, even though sort of earlier in the season Lambert said we can't play 4-4-2 because we're utterly rubbish at it. Even though sort of in 4 of the 5 games that followed, we changed to 4-4-2 mid-game, and it tended to bring a goal, as it did last week. We changed to 4-4-2, scored instantly, and then had someone sent off, so ended up having to go 4-4-1. But Lambert seems to have made a rod for his own back with this 4-4-2 comment, because I don't really understand how signing in 18-year-old and having 6 strikers at the club as opposed to 5 means you can now magically play 4-4-2. But it's just, I just looked at the stats there, and I think after 6 games, we had 16 points and we'd scored 14 goals. In the 17 games since, we've scored 13 goals and picked up 20 points. So it's bad.
So what's happened with you guys then? Because when me and Sam spoke last year, we were sort of both bemoaning the fact that both teams were trying to play a style of football that didn't really suit the teams and the players, and the defenders were being asked to play out from the back, and it was all very pedestrian. But so have you guys changed formation or changed style?
Yeah, so I think we got Calderwood in, I think, since we spoke. We didn't have Calderwood. Calderwood came in for Burton game, and we won our first away game since 1912, I think it was, with Jerry Yates for getting sort of a couple of goals for us. And yeah, he seemed to add some sort of reassurance to the team and a bit of organisation. And given sort of Critchley sort of the experience he needed to go and add the creativity he wants, but also be quite sensible. Critchley's made some woeful and arguably still continues to make some poor subs, but he's learning the game, and I for one have changed my opinion of him, and I think he's an excellent coach. And we mainly play 4-4-2 now, and Medin's hit a nice purple patch, and Yates and him are working really well. York and Cole, they call each other. Picked up some good results against West Brom in the cup. We beat him on penalties, should have beat him in normal time. Won some decent games, beat Peterborough, beat Hull. After conceding the 88th minute against Hull, we then went up the other end of the pitch, played 16 passes and slotted in the back of the net, and it just gives that team that sort of vibe. And yeah, we are just sort of below you, and I think we're much more, say, consistent. You don't expect us to concede a lot at the moment. You don't probably expect us to score a lot. So the 5-0 was a pleasant surprise. But we're just a lot more organised, and the players on the pitch now are the ones we've been quite cutthroat with, and Sam will probably allude to it as well. We've been quite cutthroat with who we got rid of. Michael Nottingham is now playing for Accrington Stanley, and they're 2 games in hand from going top of the league. And because he didn't work with Marvin Epkateta, he got rid of him. He just literally said Accrington to sign him, and now he's playing out of his skin for Accrington Stanley. So the manager wants what the manager wants, and he's getting that message across. He'll pick the team that he think will beat the next opponent, not necessarily on form. He's happy to drop Medin when he scored 2, and I kind of like that against Wigan, we had 8 players out, and we still managed to win 5-0, and everyone was questioning, are we going to do well against sort of a struggling side? And they just turned up, and it was so good to see. We had a defender who hasn't played all season start, and he played again phenomenally well, and he was going to go in the transfer window, and now luckily he's going to stay. So it's difficult to put your finger on it. We're not there yet by any stretch of the imagination, and we could go on and potentially lose 3 games, but I wouldn't be surprised if we won 5 in a row. So it's that bit of a, can't quite put your finger on it now, but the process, as Coach Critchley has just said in the chat there, trust the process. And he's a manager which is learning, and I think Blackpool fans need to understand where we've come from as well. Initially, I was one of the ones that said Critchley probably needs to go because he's too inexperienced, but adding Calderwood to the staff and him having his creativity on the team has enabled us to be the Blackpool that we know and love previous to the Oystons. So, or previous to sort of what went on pre sort of boycott. So we're enjoying the football a lot more now, and we're enjoying the players that we have, and we're getting a relationship with them again. So we can't wait to get back to Bloomford Road or go away with the boys again and build that sort of physical relationship with them as well. So I've gone on a tangent a little bit, but yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to say something. Carry on saying, but no. I don't want to say too much more than what Tom said, because he's probably the same thing, but I like how he's been quite ruthless in the January transfer window. Players that he brought in the summer, Sarkic, Williams, and just said, look, you're not only part of the plans. And I think as a new manager coming in, he's going to take time to learn. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a season for me. He's new to it. He's used to developing players and not focusing on results, being obviously academy at Liverpool. So I think it was always going to be a strange transition for the manager, and I just felt it needed time and the right ingredients in, and I think we're getting there. But this is no means that the final product, I think, for Blackpool in League One. Is this the season we go up? I don't think so, but we've built a foundation, I think, with players on 2 to 3 year contracts that if they can stay and they can really push us up with the fans inside the ground, as I think if you've both been to Blackpool before, you know what the atmosphere is like. It can be a real hostile environment for a away team. So I think with everything coming together, we can see some success on the pitch. But I think we've just got 22 players this season, senior players you can sign. I think it drops down to 20 next season. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah, I just think COVID's had a massive impact this year on teams and the stability and how it goes, because I believe that pre-season tours and things are so important. And I guess you guys have probably witnessed that as well as many clubs in League One, Joe.
Well, this is probably where sort of our owner should give us an advantage, that we have been so stable throughout this whole process because he's willing to write the checks. And sort of with the loan signings that have joined, we currently have 53 senior professionals or sort of third-year scholars on the books. So 53 players that are over 18 currently on the books. And I think, but in the summer, 21 of contracts are up, 6 loan players to go back. So we're just in a real must-win now mode. But other than sort of everything is geared around winning now with the way the squad's been built, apart from the manager, effectively, that the owner is backed him. We've almost recruited in this window like a side that has just appointed a new manager and trying to give him a few bodies to help shape his squad. But it's the manager's 5th transfer window, and like I say, we're so stacked with players, and there's not a huge amount of difference between sort of our first choice striker and our 5th choice striker, and we've probably got 10 central midfielders that could play for sort of 90% of the clubs in this league and not look bad. And it's, like I say, it's a real mess, and it's the sort of mess you'd expect if you've changed managers 2 or 3 times in quick succession, not when you've had one in charge for 2.5 years.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, previous to me talking for about an hour, what happened with, because Troy Parrott, for me, regardless of his goal scoring record, I've seen him play for Millwall, and I've seen him sort of in the youth, and you see YouTube clips, etc. I actually thought it was quite an exciting signing, but my first other instinct was you need someone who's experienced in League One, and he's not going to add that. And I watched a bit of the podcast previously when I think it was Ben was talking about how many actual players, and Joe, you've just said it there as well. You've got why have you got so many players, and why have you signed so many? It's just, it doesn't, and I'm probably just adding salt to the wound here, but it just doesn't make sense to me looking back at why you've done this, when regardless of sort of the runs you've been on 2-3 years ago, you still had an identity. And I said, being local, I know how Ipswich can play, and I know you can go on runs, i.e. the playoffs a few years ago, etc., where you are, a real threat, but it just doesn't. You've lost your identity, and I think whether that goes with Lambert, I don't know. But looking at your squad, you've still got enough to challenge for that top 10. It's just a shame to see in some respects, but I don't know why you've got so many players on the books.
It's just the problem is there's just no strategy in the transfers either. Now we tend to go from transfer window to transfer window, and it's always seems to be a sticking plaster signing or two, or loan signing or two, to cover up a gap in the squad or a lack of quality in the squad, where you think, well, you knew that lack of quality of squad wasn't there 2 transfer windows ago or 3 transfer windows ago. There's just no continuity. There's no one within the club that's thinking this far ahead in terms of putting together some sort of continuity or succession planning for players that are either getting too old, or players that you might think, God forbid, someone will actually want to buy from you. And I think that's why the squad just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It just gets bloated because we're just adding to it, thinking, well, he's not doing what he should be. But as Joe said earlier, they're not particularly being coached to be any better. We're just bringing players in the hope that they're going to be better than the ones that are already in place and haven't been doing particularly well or badly, really. As you say, Tom, Troy Parrott on paper, and as Joe said separately via other outlets, is in isolation. You could argue the case for any of the signings that we've made in this transfer window, but I'd argue about the 2 that we did early doors, because they're sort of very similar to the players we've already got. But certainly Matheson as a right back, we need a right back to help Chambers out, who Joe said he's getting on, and probably the last time he was marauding at the pitch was against Blackpool, and he scored the weldy from just outside the box, didn't he? Yeah. The other side, Ward, who was obviously at Stoke and Burnley in the Premier League, his legs went a few weeks ago, and he only got dropped last week. So we just need a bit of impetus, or a bit of pace, and a bit of youth at the back, probably. But it's not really taking our squad to another level. It's, as Joe said, they're all very much of a muchness signings, playing in exactly the same position, and it's just going to end up with more muddled thinking from the manager, because he's going to have so many players to choose from. He's not going to know his arse from his elbow.
Yeah, I think you'd rather see sort of 10, 15 players less and 3 or 4 real quality signings for League One. And I've always said that. I think when Blackpool lost to West Ham, when we lost to West Ham, we only need to make 2 or 3 signings, and then you can kick on again as a team. And we didn't end up doing that. We ended up signing quite a few, and we lost our identity again. And obviously all the troubles sort of continued from there. But as I said, as a local boy, it's a shame to see, really, because you've always been one of those teams that have been, in the Championship for many years, but that's not a bad place to be. And if you do have a go at promotion every so often with a strong side, then it's there or thereabouts. But like you said, with 50 odd players on the books and an uninspiring manager who won't talk to the local press, let alone the fans, is a recipe for disaster. So one way or the other, I hope it gets sorted out.
I don't think he talks much to the players either, let alone the fans or the local press. And the thing is, well, he contradicts himself. He says all the right things. He says the things you expect and say. That he himself has said he doesn't want to rely on loans. He'd rather have a core of 24 players at the most, and then just bring in youth players as and when he needs them. Well, as Joe said, we've now got twice as many as that. So he's contradicted himself there. It's just a shambles from top to bottom at the moment, unfortunately, sadly.
Yeah, I think many Blackpool fans can relate to the shambles inside a football club, but those days have gone for us. So we apologise that you're going through that at the moment.
The thing for us, it's totally unnecessary that it's a shambles, because the owner, he doesn't make the best football decisions, but ultimately he's quite supportive. He backs his managers. He doesn't interfere, and it's just unnecessary to be where we are. And like I say, you talk about the salary cap coming in next year. Well, we're the salary cap and sort of coming out of COVID is going to help teams that are sort of smart, dynamic, forward thinking, and we're the opposite of all those. And it does feel that unless we get something very right, we're going to struggle to get out of League One when all the teams are on. Effectively, we're hamstrung to only be able to spend $2.5 million on salary, because we're going to need to spend more than that to outperform teams that are only spending that because of how poorly we run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, and I think a lot of clubs are going to have to either bring in youth players and try and top up the squads with that, or, because I said, if you're going down to 20 senior players in your squad, it's really going to have an effect on those who have got a bigger squad, and I think Blackpool are in that category with you guys as well. So I want to move it positive for you guys, because I feel like we've just been down. Last time the two sides met, obviously you won 4-1 at Blackpool. Chambers, Edwards with a brace, and Bishop on the score sheet, with Medine grabbing a late consolation goal for the Seasiders. I know it seems such a long time ago, Craig, but do you remember much from that game, and what were your thoughts after beating us 4-1?
Well, it sort of came out of the blue, really, because as we spoke about before that match, we were, even then, we were pretty pedestrian. We weren't creating an awful lot of chances. I don't think we created too many chances in that match, but we seemed to hit the target and then to go in more often than not. As I say, that was at that point in the season, really, where things, and that probably, well, it was our highlight of the season so far, in that Edwards, who was playing on the wing, was marauding down the left and cutting in. Chambers as right back, I say, was getting onto the edge of your box and slamming in volleys, which is unheard of. And it was at that point in the season where things had clicked and we were top of the league. I'd say it's been a steady decline ever since. And I say, yeah, I don't really see it's gonna make any difference tomorrow. The last result is going to have any bearing at all on tomorrow's game or tomorrow's result.
Joe, did you watch the reverse fixture?
That's the only game this season I've missed, because I was actually away that weekend for my son's birthday. But I listened to it on the radio, and I've obviously seen the highlights, and I have actually watched the game back since then. But it's just, like I say, that was the sort of perfect performance for us, in that you came on to us and we were able to hit you quickly on the break, where we've lost any of that dynamism now. And whether that's to do with the fullbacks struggling to get forward, but I think it's just the confidence has just been totally sucked out of the team, that nobody is willing to try anything or do anything. And it's almost like we've signed these new players to sort of try and come in with a clear mind and sort of get away from that. And Luke Thomas has made a couple of positive impacts in the games he's played, where he's actually tried to get forwards. But like Craig was saying, I wouldn't worry at all about anything you saw in that game there, because that might as well have been a different team, and sort of a different club, a different team to what we are now. So it's, like I said, we're effectively sort of throwing mud at the wall and hoping something sticks, because we've sort of made some changes, and it's just a hope that some of those changes pay off for the manager. Because, like I say, if you think we've got 3 new attacking players, that's, I'd say, it's damning really of the team that you're needing to do that when you see what we've got there. We've got sort of a new fullback who can push on from the back, but it is, like I say, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, we're going to get stuffed tomorrow, because we don't seem to lose heavily, because we're pretty well organised defensively, and we've got sort of decent quality at this level. But it's if we concede, we're going to struggle to get back into the game.
I think Blackpool fans might put in the chat, and a couple already alluded to it. I don't know if you remember the game, Craig, or sort of specifically the goals, but Gabriel, for us, we signed him from Nottingham Forest, and we were quite excited by him, and as the worst game he's had for Blackpool. Was
he the fullback?
Yeah.
Edwards gave him a tough time, didn't he?
He got absolutely ruined that day, and I think he learned from that, because he's been pretty good for the, and he was really good on Tuesday as well. But overall, he's been really consistent. I'm a bit confused that where Nottingham Forest were, why they let him go. But that day, I think I said on the next podcast, is exactly where you'd see a top 2 League One side taking advantage of a team's frailties. And like you said, I'm not going to add to what you've just sort of mentioned, but the downfall of the team and the lack of direction is exactly where we were at that time. You just knew we were going to concede and play sloppy football. It's just a surprise to see, really. And like I said previously, hopefully you get it sorted out, but after tomorrow. But yeah, for your own sake and for the fans' sake, it's just not nice to see a team of your stature do that. But you had that killer instinct that day, and you were quite scary every time you attacked. It was like, are they going to score? And it was 4-0 at half time, and I just sat there in my chair. I was like, we're playing Ipswich. I've got about 50 friends that are Ipswich fans, and I'm not going to enjoy the rest of my evening, and you're going to kick on from here. But like you said, it's just gone the opposite direction. So it's a shame to see.
Yeah, I was looking at Blackpool's fixtures, Tom, and the fans listening. Obviously, the 4-1 defeat, 1-1 draw away at Crewe, lost to Charlton at home, not a great performance, if I remember rightly, and then the win against MK Dons, loss away at Wimbledon, and then the 5 games unbeaten run in all competitions came. So it has. I think Blackpool learned a lot of lessons that day. Whether it should have been played still is a question that would need to be asked, but it did give us a free weekend a bit further down the line.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that. I don't know if I'm completely wrong, but I remember Ipswich having actually a torrid time with COVID or injuries that weekend, and they were surprised it was going ahead as well. I don't know if I'm wrong, Joe or Craig, but I remember at the time I was speaking to one of my Ipswich mates, and he said, I don't know why the game's going ahead because you had a few injuries as well, maybe a few first-team players out.
Yeah, I think we did have injury. I think we were a bit surprised it was squeezed in at the time, especially it being an away game as well and a bit of a trek. But yeah, it came good in the end, didn't it? But we were talking about fullbacks there. What's happened? Is Luke Garbutt playing at the moment?
Yeah, he's had on and off injuries. When he has played, he's looked decent. I see him a bit like a player called Mitchell we've got at the club. I like to see him more as a winger when we've got our wingers out, which we have.
Yeah,
but he's had a couple of injuries. So he hasn't played as much as we probably want to. But it's a massive coup at any level, sort of Garbutt, apart from the Premier League. But he could probably do a job in the Championship, and is been brilliant when he has played. I mean, he hasn't really had a massively bad game, and he's had some half decent games. So he's been solid overall. And he would probably be arguably the first name in terms of defence, one of those players that you want to play, and certainly someone that Ipswich could do with now. And he's energetic and he tries to make things happen. And as you both know, he's got a really good set piece on him. He scored against us last season, didn't he, with the penalty? And I thought he would be playing higher. So for me, it's a massive signing, and hopefully someone that can start playing a little bit more as well. He was rested last game, so he might start tomorrow. Fingers crossed he doesn't continue with injuries, as Matt's just alluded to as well, because it's a bit frustrating not seeing him as much as we want.
Yeah, definitely. Just going on to this, Tom, before we go on to more Ipswich and their season in a bit more depth. But Blackpool, 10 wins, 4 draws, 9 defeats. As we alluded to, they're quite a slow start to the season, but pre-Christmas, before the 2 postponements, should I say, went on a bit of a run. And Jerry Yates, the side's top goal scorer. I think it's 10 goals in all competitions this season, 8 in the league. CJ and Medine are next with 5 and 4 goals respectively. What do you think has just happened, Tom, with Blackpool? Is it more of a case that they've found a belief, like you said, that identity that they've got? Things just seem to be ticking a little bit more, don't they? And we actually believed that we could go to Brighton, get a result. We were disappointed not to go through. I think 2 lucky goals. Well, no, sorry, one wonder strike and a lucky goal for the second, should I say. But things are just looking up for us, aren't they? And it's, again, good to get 2 wins on the bounce.
Yeah, for me, the Rochdale postponement was an absolute killer to our season. It's not dramatic to say, we're only 23 games in, but I think we won 8 out of 9. We beat Fleetwood, we beat Hull, and we were just on this form. I think the key difference was 2 words, was Kenny Dougal. He was an absolute magician in the middle of the midfield and someone we needed to grab hold of the games and be a difference, because we didn't have that in the centre. And Kenny's added that. And even with COVID, he still performed at a higher level than what we were previously performing at pre-signing him. So I think he made a massive difference and made the team glue together. And especially the Fleetwood game, because you'll probably tell me the record term, but Fleetwood don't lose at home. Mm-hmm. When we played them, they didn't lose at home, and we scored a goal through Medine, and he sort of controlled the game and made sure they didn't have any shots on target, or 1 shot on target, whatever it was, and we weren't never any threat of conceding, and he's made them a big difference. And now Stewart's come in. The centre of the park is somewhere where we need to sort of really win games at, because we've got the force up front to do it, and we've got the players at back to handle it. So for me, he was a key part of that run. And after the 2 games back from COVID, the Shrewsbury game was appalling. We were piss bored, excuse my French, but we were awful. And getting those 2 wins after the cup run has put us in a good stead for tomorrow. So I think tomorrow, regardless of how Ipswich fans think they'll play, will be an interesting match, because they're defensively well organised, and and so will we. So it'll be interesting to see who can score the first goal and kick on.
Yeah, definitely. Just a quick one on transfers. Obviously, Ellis Sims has come in, made his Blackpool debut against Brighton, and his full debut against Wigan. Did he come on? Oh, no, sorry, he came on, didn't he, at Wigan, and then full debut of the day. So look at the transfer that came in for Blackpool: Stewart, Embleton, Sims, and Ballard as well, with his loan extended. You've got to say it's quite a good transfer window for Blackpool.
Yeah, Nick in the podcast chat said it perfectly. I think if we signed the players we signed on deadline day, because there's such this all-around deadline day that you have to sign someone because it's deadline day, and there's all that sort of manic, oh my God, why haven't we signed anyone? But if you said on deadline day we announced Ballard's extension and signed the players we signed, then we had a fantastic window. And I didn't want us to sign 6 or 7 players. We needed to sign, like I mentioned earlier, not 10 players on a small wage, just 2 or 3 on a decent wage that are going to change the team. And I think Stewart and Ballard and Sims are going to do that. So credit to the recruitment team again. Stewart for me is probably the standout there, and keeping Ballard from Arsenal will just give our defence everything we need going into the second half of the season. So I'm delighted with the business we've done. I don't know about you, Sam.
Yeah, I said before, I think we just needed a few more bodies. CJ was a big loss with his injury, and obviously Keshi Anderson. Again, I never thought he was right in terms of his kind of body language on the pitch. I thought, was he carrying something? Is he not confident? But again, at his young age, to get an injury out of his way with surgery and stuff, it looks like it's going well from what we've heard from the club and what he posts on social media. So I do think it's a long-term project, and if we can bring players in and showcase that we can develop players, like we did with Shrewsbury Hall last season, and a few of them that we can push on. But one look at Ipswich again: 11 wins, 3 draws, 9 defeats. I think 2 points above Blackpool and 1 place in the league table. As we said, they started off the season very well in pole position. But I'll come to you first, Joe. Edwards sits at top goal scorer on 5, I believe, and then Bishop's second on 4. Are those 2 players you think would be the ones for Blackpool fans to watch out for?
Yeah, if they play, that I think Edwards should play, but they've both had sort of decent length injuries, which has sort of stopped them in their tracks. Because it wouldn't surprise me if they both had 5 and 4 goals after we beat you on that fifth game of the season, or at least one game after that, because neither of them have scored for some time because they were both injured for a long time. That did hurt us. We have struggled with injuries this year with our key players, and they are 2 good players. But
Bishop's suspended tomorrow, isn't he?
Yeah, Bishop was sent off last week against Crewe, so he's suspended. He'd only come on as sub 10-15 minutes before that. So I'd say Edwards will probably start, but he's only been back 2 or 3 games, and he hasn't really looked back at it, where at the start of the season was, well, like I say, as you guys saw, he was absolutely electric at the start of the season.
Yeah, we'll move on to topics. Sorry, we're going to do manager stuff. Obviously, we've heard your manager doesn't speak to local media, so we found it a little bit challenging to see what he was saying. But I know what Critchley and he's done. I did have the video ready, so please bear with me. We'll play a little bit of what Blackpool manager Neil Critchley had to say. So we'll just take a short break while you listen to what Neil Critchley had to say ahead of this game.
Momentum after back-to-back wins and back-to-back clean sheets, in really good form to go and do that.
Yeah, and we want to put a run together. We've shown before Christmas that we're capable of doing that. To score 7 goals and not concede in the past 2 has been very pleasing. But we know Ipswich away on Saturday will be a different type of game than the one we faced on Tuesday. But we want to carry on that confident feeling that we've got within the group.
Transfer window is now closed. You know, the group that you're going to be working with from now until the end of the season. The last one to come in, Elliot Embleton, first training session today. How much are you looking forward to working with him and seeing him grow and what he can add to the team?
Yeah. You know, that one came about on deadline day, and my previous sort of knowledge of knowing what Elliot's capable of helped in that situation, because you don't get a lot of time to think of these decisions. But Elliot's a player that I've been aware of for a number of years, and I believe he's an excellent player, can play in a number of positions, can bring goals to the team, and he's an energetic midfield player who can attack and get forward, and it looks like, and from everyone you speak to, what a really good character he is as well. So he'll fit in really well with the dressing room we've got. He wants to come here and contribute, and I'm delighted that he has decided that he wants to come here and play some games, because it would have been easy for him to stay at Sunderland. So delighted with that, and really looking forward to working with him.
Oh, there's always some technical issues, and we'll put it on mute. Just close that down on my laptop. This is why I need two screens. It gets too complicated. But Tom, your thoughts on what Neil Critchley had to say there? He's just had a little word in the chat there, just saying, "Ain't I great?" So, what are your thoughts on what he said?
He's always been a very good talker. At the start of the season, I was frustrated with how well he talked and how badly we played. But it's coming together a little better now. And like you said, he's very reassured, and what he says is right. You know, Embleton looks like a decent player, and if he knows him, then we're not here to judge his signings, because we've done that with, you know, everyone was saying, well, who's he? Why have we signed him? And then when we signed Dougal, everyone was like, who's this guy? And all of a sudden we've got the player who's the best midfielder in our club. So I'm looking forward to seeing Embleton when he does play, but you know, fingers crossed it comes through. And like I said, it's just been very calm, hasn't he? For a new manager coming into the footballing world, to be a solo sort of manager and have your first job, he's just done an exceptional job in dealing with the media. And you know, we haven't done too badly on the pitch overall. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. Yeah,
Joe or Craig, I don't know who ever wants to answer this one, but the only article I see on the Ipswich Town website is the one with Matt Gill, the first team coach. He mainly talks about the signings coming in and how they'll help the club going forward. But what's the mood in the camp been like from your end heading into this game?
Well, it's pretty low morale in the camp, isn't it? From what we hear, the sort of bits that leak out, sort of from the sort of players locally into the press and things, it does seem that you hear the party line of, oh, everyone's positive, oh, it's a really good camp, but ultimately the local papers called for the manager to go. The sort of the independent Ipswich Town website, TWTD, are banned, as has been sort of noted previously, and Paul Lambert hasn't spoke to the press sort of pre-game for 5 or 6 games now. He originally it was to do with COVID, that he was too ill. He was obviously struck down badly by COVID, but since then he hasn't been able to do it. But he's been on sort of 5 Live talking about having COVID. He's been on Scottish football coverage talking about Scottish football. He's speaking about Borussia Dortmund in the press. He
Football Focus last weekend, wasn't he?
Football Focus last weekend with Clem, and it's just a very strange situation where the owner's effectively letting the manager getting away with not talking to the press in a time where, in reality, there is no way for fans to voice themselves, and that is the only communication between the club and the sort of county and the sort of supporters base is through the press, and it's just not happening. And I say it's a shambles, really, that it's gone on as long as it has, and when will it end is really what we'd say, because like I said, we're not in a bad position if somebody could come in and grab hold of this and turn it around. Well, I think so the longer it goes on, the less likely it is going to happen. But if it were to happen soon, and we would have this conversation in 3-4 weeks, and we had a new manager by then, I think the fan base would be a lot more positive.
Craig, just coming to you, 4 points off playoffs. You're sounding, and probably Blackpool fans as well, that the season's over, but there's so much to play for, and there's going to be so much hit and miss with players. With COVID, obviously, we hope that ends soon with the vaccines coming in and players and everyone else can get them. But there's going to be so many twists and turns, and it's going to be a bit of a cliche with Blackpool, a bit of a roller coaster for all teams in that League One. Yeah,
that's right. We are just outside the playoffs, but our trajectory isn't upwards at the moment, and we're always sort of thinking, well, the size of our club and the size of our squad, other teams around us are going to get hit more heavily than we are by COVID, or going to get hit more heavily than we are by injuries, and eventually the size of our squad will help us help us go forward. But it's all reliant on the guy in charge knowing what he's doing with that massive squad, isn't it? Unfortunately, as you guys said earlier, we've lost 6 of our last 7 home games, and the one that we didn't lose was because we beat Burton. And as I said before, we haven't taken the lead in 20 matches at half time. I can't see too much light at the end of the tunnel at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, we're just. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think we've won 4 out of our last 15 games, and we've beaten Burton twice, who are well clear at the bottom of the league.
We're going to see if we can play them again next week. We're going to bring next season's fixture forward to next weekend.
A huge win for you, that wasn't it?
Yeah, so we've beaten Burton twice. We beat Plymouth. We were 1-0 down. They had someone sent off, and we scored 2 goals in a minute and won 2-1. And Shrewsbury, when they'd lost 5 or 6 in a row just before Ricketts was sacked, we beat them with a 97th minute winner. That's, like I said, that's how bad it is over since October, is it? Since then? Or November? No, probably since November. I think we've won 4 in 15, and like I say, it is against. Like I said, there's not been a good performance in that time. Probably Burton at home is probably the only game where we've actually sort of dominated and deserved to win.
Yeah.
No, very interesting. As I said, we've just gone past the hour mark, and I don't want to keep you guys too long because I know you've got busy schedules with COVID. But we've had the fans sending their predictions for this evening. I apologise, some who sent them early on. The chat does get rid, I think, after 45 minutes from those early ones. So if you've left it before, please leave it again. We'll read through 3 before we go to Joe and Craig. But Steve reckons it's going to be 1-0 to the mighty Pool. We'll see who gets that goal there. And Christian said 2-0 to Blackpool, and Jez 1-0 to Blackpool, which I think is the first time we've read 3 out, and they've all had wins for Blackpool. So I'll come to you guys. I'll come to Craig first. Your score predictions for tomorrow's game?
Well, I think you guys are actually favourites, aren't you? With the bookies to win tomorrow as well. We're 2-1, I think, to win at home in the 3rd division, which is a fantastic situation to find yourself. I think if you come at us and score. If you score before we score, the best we'll get out of it is a draw. I'll go for a hopeful 1-1.
Hopeful 1-1. Very inspiring. Joe?
Yeah, I was going to say 1-1 too, purely because it feels like we're in a position where the manager's just going to accumulate just enough points to stay in a job, as opposed to actually crashing and burning or pushing us up to the playoffs. So I think we're just going to pick up the odd draw here and there, and like I say, we're not going to score more than once, so I'd say 1-1.
Yeah, I'll come to you, Tony, in a minute. Read a few more out because there's plenty that are coming, which is fantastic to all those listening live, and those who might want to, who missed some of the show, you can always watch it back after it's finished. But Gareth says Ipswich 0, Blackpool 1, Yates to score in this 67th minute. You got to put that a bet on now, haven't you? He's cursed it if that comes through tomorrow in the same time. Righty, he says 2-1 to Blackpool. Stewart and Matty Virtue to get on the score sheet. I've also said before, Josh with going with Joe there with the 1-1. Tom, your thoughts on tomorrow's game, and if I can get a score prediction and the goal scorers to come with that.
All the goal scorers as well.
Pressure.
Everyone's excited about the Northampton game because Jerry Yates scored one of the most incredible goals you'll see in a tangerine shirt, but the performance overall could have been a lot more reassured. But if Ipswich aren't creating a lot, they'll be buoyed by their signings a little bit if Troy starts. I don't know if he will, but I think we've got the defence to handle what they can give us, and I think we've got the attacking capabilities to finally get the first win at Bloomfield Road. So neck on the line and say 2-0. And I'll go, if Medine starts, Medine and Yates, both York and Cole to do the job tomorrow.
I'm going to go with Chris on this one. I think it's going to be a 2-1 to Blackpool. I just think a bit of form and the 2 wins out of 2, again, a bit of belief against a side who we've said quite often in the show that are struggling with confidence, especially at home. So hopefully we can take advantage of that. So Chris, I'm going with your scoreline, and I'm going to go for Yates to get 1. And I'm going to go for Dougal. I'm going to go out there and say he needs a goal because he hasn't scored for a while. Matt's feeling very optimistic with a 3-0 home win for Ipswich.
Look at the stats, Matt, for God's sake. Look at the stats.
And he's a Blackpool fan, and he's on the podcast, so I'm sure he
He's
won't be
one of
invited
us,
back. He's again, Josh just explaining his reason for the 1-1. Both teams half decent, but can't seem to score against teams that are poor. I can understand that when it's coming to them. We said Chris is coming out there. Ray, he says 2-1 to Blackpool with the tangerine heart and the actual tangerine. 0-0 for Ipswich. I hope it's not boring and people pay £10 to watch a 0-0 draw. David Jackson says 2-1 to Blackpool. We'll read through all these before we finish off. Nick Muller, 3-1 to Ipswich. That'll be a great scoreline for our
Get some
guests
decent odds
tomorrow.
on that, Mick.
Yeah, Nick, put it on. Make sure you cash in at the end when you're winning by 3 or 4. And Steve just says, Gareth, get that one on the bookies. So final one, sorry, just come in. Fat Goat Sack, always sure to say that one. Says 3-1 to Blackpool. So again, thank you so much for getting all your comments in you regarding the topics we spoke about, and also there with the score predictions. But I guess from myself and Tom and the rest of the Seaside podcast, Craig, it's been great to have you back on the show, and I hope you've enjoyed it this evening. Yeah,
lovely. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, good to have a chat. I say it's good to have a chat and a moan to someone that's is willing to listen to something hasn't been heard before, because we're bored shitless talking about it between ourselves.
Therapy, that's what we're here for, a bit of therapy. and Joe, your first cap with us. It's been great to have your insight on Ipswich and your thoughts going into the game tomorrow. So again, a huge thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed the show this evening.
No, that's been great. Thanks, guys. And I think there's been a few comments saying, "Oh, Ipswich are trying to talk themselves down," but honestly, just look at the stats, look at the fixture list, and just look how poor we are. We're generally sort of quite optimistic, but it's just impossible to be with what's going on at the moment. And it isn't just us being negative. It is just really poor. And try and take advantage of us before. Well, if things do turn around, don't come there and sit there and think a draw is a good result. It's there for the taking.
Critchley, if you're watching, as you were on Twitter before, they're there for the taking. So again, John was saying, thank you guys for coming on, David as well, and Steve. So again, it's a huge thank you from myself and Tom. And Tom, again, a huge thanks for coming on, because I know you've had a busy week this week.
No, all good, mate. It's good to talk football rather than houses, which I've been doing all week. So yeah, look forward to the game tomorrow. And if you want to join us on the 606, guys, we'll be live from after the match, and I'll post a link to it. It'd be good to see you back on to analyse the game as well.
Yeah, definitely. We'll try and sort that out with John and the rest of the crazy gang, as I'm going to call them, for tomorrow. But also, if anyone who isn't a patron, who missed the Charlie Adam interview in midweek, definitely stay tuned for Sunday evening. I think they're doing a live premiere on YouTube, so stay tuned for that. And I believe Charlie Adam is going to be answering people's questions in the chats, in the comment section. So stay tuned for that. And there'll be more information on the Seasiders podcast YouTube channels and social media channels as well. So if you're on YouTube as well, make sure to give us a like, because that definitely helps us bump up numbers, and make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we want to try and get to that 1,000 mark. But from myself and the rest of the gang this evening, I wish you all the best, and hopefully it's 3 points for the Seasiders. Good night.